Star Wars Hunters was originally slated to release back in 2021, but then has since had several delays, extending its production time to I believe around 3 years. Running in the Unreal Engine and coming from the infamous Zynga, yes, that would be Zynga, the free-to-play mobile guys. I have to admit I went into this one thinking it was basically a foregone conclusion. Is this free-to-play, squad-based action game one to check out, or are you going to be hunting for the off button? Well, my name's Mark Walker, welcome back to SwitchUp, now let's find out. As I'm sure you might expect, there is no storyline here whatsoever. Well, actually, you might expect something different, mightn't you, from a franchise that's based around some decent storytelling. But no, you're booting up to the colourful bells and whistles of what feels like something you might find on the Las Vegas Strip. And I mean that in a number of ways. Initially, you're treated to a tutorial which guides you through the general mechanics, which are pretty straightforward. Two teams face off against each other in a variety of different game modes, 4 versus 4, and once you've chosen your class, which we'll get onto in a minute, you'll try and complete those objectives, be it eliminating all of the enemy team trying to get 25 kills, or holding different points around a map. As far as controls go, they've actually gone to some lengths on the Switch version. You can customize the XY axis, you can change all of the button layouts, and it's also got 2 implementations of gyroscopic support, meaning you can tailor that to exactly how you like it. I have to say, this was far more than I thought they would have put into the version, so it is clear they actually intend for Switch players to get a decent experience. Gameplay's quite straightforward. Damage numbers will pop up on enemies' heads as you take pot shots, and you'll be trying to use a number of different class-specific skills, such as firing multiple rockets, using a shoulder-mounted auto-locking rocket, or a grappling hook and sniper rifle combo.
I sense your frosty delicious.
There are a few familiar faces here with suitable movesets, and as far as core mechanics goes, it actually feels quite good. Now with these games, it really does rely on the balancing of individual units, and Zynga have done a reasonable job here. The Sentinel class is one I quickly got on board with, able to bring up a shield in front of you, but a bit more slow and cumbersome, making you vulnerable from an attack from the rear, whereas the more powerful Sniper class, in the right hands, can be absolutely devastating. Certainly combined with the gyro, I'd say the Switch is probably one of the easier platforms to play on. Hunters has a variety of arenas from popular film locations, and they look quite good. The actual layouts of them work really well for the small 4v4 teams, with some favouring certain classes. The more open stages obviously will benefit those ranged players, but the smaller, more claustrophobic ones, well, they become a bit of a Wookiee fest. You can only choose one of each of the characters. You won't have 4 Wookiees on your team. That was a good idea, but it does get a bit irritating when someone else chooses your favourite class. Still, it means you've got to mix up your styles and try out different things. And I mentioned balancing. I think most of those classes do have real strengths that will take a bit of practice, but which make them quite enjoyable to play. One thing I will say is, although you get points for kills as well as assists, a class like the Medic doesn't seem to get quite the recognition it deserves for its efforts. I think they need to do a little bit of tweaking there. Now thankfully I was joined by my daughter for the vast majority of the gameplay, although she didn't give herself a name, so I had the embarrassing role of essentially being generic player 456721 or something like that. But Hunters doesn't seem to have any kind of voice chat, and communication isn't particularly good or well implemented. This is a shame, as I've seen voice chat in other games on Switch, and I can understand this is generally targeting perhaps younger players, although I don't really agree with that statement. But good play does require some form of communication, and you don't have that unless you create your own party. Now you can invite friends based on previous games you've played, or just search for their names, and partying up's actually quite easy. But as I say, when you enter the ranked battles, it does become borderline essential to have some form of actual dialogue with your teammates. Despite being free to play, this isn't pay to win, and any currency you do decide to put into the game is simply going to go towards cosmetics. With that said, as part of the review, I always do test out those purchases. I made a small purchase, the money left my account incredibly quickly, and I got absolutely nothing. Oh my goodness. Yeah, despite telling me the transaction had failed, it took my hard-earned cash and basically laughed in my face. That'll teach me. Now, while I tend to never really spend any money in these games, I am glad I did it. Because I would say to you right now on Switch, just avoid putting any money into it at all. If you're someone that likes to buy cosmetics, I'd say the chances of that randomly happening to me, while slim, certainly mean that it's going to happen to someone else. I'll keep you updated in the top comment to let you know what Zynga have to say about that. Not a good look. Gameplay wise, things are surprisingly good, almost upsettingly so. I really wish this was a paid experience. I want to be unlocking things much more quickly than this. You know the design here. The old battle pass system, the slow trickle of unlocks, and then the on-screen, why don't you spend 25 quid on a virtual skin? I just do not like this model. And it is a shame because underneath it there's a fun game here. If you're someone that finds you can ignore all of that rubbish, then yeah, for sure. With a few friends online, it's good fun. Now, I do think they need to increase the variety of game modes. And another point to mention is that when you first start out, it's doing that cheeky little thing that Zynga like to do. It makes you think you're playing with players online, and it's actually bots. The way to tell this is you'll see them running against the fences, and they might just stand still and spin around a few times, but it tries to give them convincing names so that you think you're the best player the world's ever seen. Now, I know these tricks. They're trying to get you completely hooked into the game, and then obviously the goalposts will move as they introduce real players. But it doesn't tell you, and it feels a little underhand. So when we paired up as a duo, we saw a significant rise in the difficulty. Despite my moans, I do actually really enjoy the game. The balancing seems so-so. The unlocks of the actual characters, they take a while. At least you don't have to pay for them. And I do like the way they macro level. So as you play as a specific class, it will gain a new level, and its abilities will improve slightly. None of that's tied to any payments, and that was a sound choice. I also appreciate the controls and the amount of time they've put into those, and that goes for both docked and handheld play. What it needs right now then are more arenas, definitely more gameplay modes, and it potentially could have some legs in terms of longevity. I'd give gameplay 15 out of 20. The controls are actually really good. They score 18 out of 20. Now visually this runs on the Unreal Engine. You're looking at 30 FPS in both docked or handheld mode. I did notice a couple of drops when there's lots of particle effects on screen, but generally it's a reasonably smooth experience. I think 60 would have been the sweet spot, and I'm sure this will be running at that on mobile, ironically enough, but I don't think the Switch can handle that. Artistically, it's quite a nice looking game. They've drawn on some of their animated series, but I do not like the visual storefront. It does feel like something you'd pick straight up on mobile. The price tags everywhere, the flashing lights, the pop-up boxes trying to make you spend money. It's just not a pleasant experience. Now, as for audio, this one sounds quite good. The weapons are solid, the music is obviously fantastic, but the lack of voice chat, that's a real miss.
Now you're all in trouble. It's not personal.
It's undeniable they've done a good job with the Unreal Engine, even if I don't like some of the UI design elements. Visuals and performance score 16 out of 20. They really should have implemented voice chat and voice communication in a better way. Audio scores 14 out of 20. The game's obviously free, so you might expect it to get 20 out of 20 for value. But let's be honest, nothing in life is truly free, and these experiences are going to cost you in time, and is it worth it? Honestly, this is really quite fun, and it irks me a little that it isn't a fully paid game without all the silly sales front things you find. With that said, it's objectively enjoyable, albeit a little bit bare bones. And there's the obvious issue of trying to make a payment and it actually not going through on Switch. Whether that's a one-off or not, it has to affect the value score. I give value 14 out of 20. Star Wars Hunters is a far better game than I thought it would be. While I don't like the free-to-play model, just as a personal preference, I have to give it credit. It is an enjoyable game. It gets a SwitchUp score of 77%, certainly worth giving a go if you're a fan of Star Wars or you just like a good squad-based shooter. Let us know what you think in the comments. I think I know what you're going to think. There'll be quite a few people that agree with me in terms of free-to-play games. There'll be others who don't give a monkeys, can kind of ignore all of that stuff and just enjoy a completely free game that's actually quite fun. But yeah, we shall see. We'll have a good old chat down there. Thanks to our Patreons, our members, all of you that enjoy the content, and as always, for all things Switch all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See